Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Finance Committee meeting of February 27th, 2025. As chair of this committee, I recognize that we have a quorum and I call this meeting to order. The first item on the agenda are any reports or announcements anybody of in the committee would like to share? If not, we shall move to accepting the minutes of January 16th, 2025. I hope everybody had a chance to review them. May I get a motion to?
Moved.
May I get a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All against, please say nay. And the motion passes. We shall now move to the next item on the agenda, which is the town manager's report. Over to you, Mr. Mizikar.
Great. Good evening, board members. We're happy to talk to you this evening about the initial budget recommendation known as fiscal projection 1 for the FY26 fiscal year. We'll walk through the presentation, provide a little background on some accomplishments and points of comparison and value for the town, and then we'll get into the budget details itself. Of course, this is all in preview and a high-level overview to the details that we'll get in later next month at the budget hearings when departments will be in to provide presentations and answer any questions that you may have and fully prepare us for town meeting for the budget. So, move ahead. So what we're going to talk about this evening is some strategic milestones, just a short reflection on progress and where we're headed in the future. We'll recap where we are with the override. As I said, Mr. Snowden will talk a little bit about some points of value in comparison to other communities. We'll talk about the priorities that were laid out for the budget, and then we'll touch on revenues again and get into the details of the budget itself. So, I want to talk just a little bit about how we've been putting some things together over the past few years. We've made a lot of progress that we're proud of, and it's certainly not a result of any isolated initiative. It comes really from a system of interconnected components that I want to talk a little bit about this evening. Really just three of them: our strategic plan, what I characterize as some internal transformation that we've been working on, and then everything being underpinned with fiscal stability. I really think we've developed some meaningful outcomes from these initiatives, and I see each one of these initiatives and components strengthening each other and depending on each other to provide more of a framework that we deliver services and results through. So I'll take a little bit to talk about each one of these three. And the first point that I want to touch on is strategic plan and just a couple broad accomplishments. I don't have time to go through all the accomplishments since the adoption of the plan in 2023, but just provide a couple highlights, and then departments will reinforce that in each one of their presentations. So obviously the strategic plan provides a clear direction and aligning our day-to-day efforts with our long-term goals, and ensures that our resources are allocated, fostering, from our perspective, a citizen-centric approach to drive continuous improvement. So we actively pursue this every day. This isn't a plan that sits on its shelf. And we have 5 strategic outcome areas that are represented through the icons on the screen, starting at the top with engaged and connected. We've done a lot of work on developing a communications program. We started with a strategic communications plan and really built a communications program from the ground up. It will continue to evolve, but we've greatly enhanced the amount and depth of content that we're able to provide to residents. And we've been able to hone in over the years on some specialized groups, including town meeting members, to make sure that they're more fully prepared for town meeting. Within the exceptional area, this is more back of the house, internal focused aspects of our business processes. We'll talk a little bit in detail about our balanced budget projection, which is now through 2028. We've recently updated our housing production plan, and since 2023 alone, we've invested $65 million in total infrastructure. Now, all that work hasn't been completed yet, but the funds have been secured, projects are underway, and/or in the planning stages, and we're moving forward to continue to invest in the community. We're really proud of the efforts that we've made in recreation programming, including the creation of an all-inclusive regional approach to some of the recreation programming, offering a significant number of community events, continue to focus on our diversity, equity, inclusion lens through all work that we do. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the accomplishments that are enabled through all this work in partnership with the Shrewsbury Public Schools. They alone stand at the top of so many categories in education, not only in the state and in the region, but in the country. And partnering with them in so many ways provides, one of the key drivers to keep this community thriving and keep people coming and investing here in Shrewsbury. We've worked a lot on public safety staffing, and while we've worked on that public safety staffing, a lot of it has been within community engagement to make sure that police and fire are engaged in the community and supporting residents on a day-to-day basis, not just in those significant times of need. When it comes to the economic front, since 2020, we've seen almost $250 million in commercial industrial property growth. And for the past 2 consecutive years, commercial industrial property growth has exceeded residential growth. And that's been a focus of this community, something, a code that we've been trying to crack for quite some time, and really bolstering the commercial property base over the residential base. That's only the 3rd time in the last 20 plus years that commercial industrial growth has exceeded residential, and we've done it back-to-back years. And a lot of this is because of the efforts that we've put into putting resources into place where there previously weren't any. I think about communications program. That's being done with resources that were previously not in place. We've created a planning and economic development department to focus on these things, and I think we're seeing results where we're making those investments. And finally, within the sustainable category, we've adopted a climate action resilience plan. We've acquired over 6 acres of land and permanently preserved it. And we've adopted our first local wetlands bylaw to further protect natural resources within the community, when we used to just rely upon the state code to do so. So internally, while our strategic plan may define our long-term vision, I think it's our internal transformation. That includes digitizing business processes, restructuring operations, and adopting a performance-based culture that really operationalizes this vision. Together, these efforts ensure strategic priorities translate into efficient, high-quality services for residents. I think this has made the organization more adaptable, efficient, enabling us to allocate resources strategically, and also sustains our fiscal stability. A couple things I want to talk about is our human resources transformation that's happened over the last 6 or so years. We've moved from a tenure-based culture and human resources approach to one of performance and accountability. This is not only driven actions on a day-to-day basis towards the outcomes of the strategic plan, but it also has empowered employees with clear performance expectations tied to those strategic goals. We've spent a lot of time investing in leadership, building capacity, and ensuring managers are equipped to drive the strategic priorities within the plan, and created an emerging leaders training program to make sure that we have succession planning in place as folks either choose to retire, leave the organization, or other opportunities are created. And finally, just talk a little bit about our enterprise resource management program and our customer resource management systems that we've focused a lot on. So we put an assistant to town manager for business systems in place about 3 years ago. And with this dedicated resource, we've really streamlined the total amount of software that we purchase and driven business processes, both those internally and those that service our customers, into these 2 key systems. It's saved us money, reducing our cost of investment, and the results are up here in summary on the screen. When it comes to the CRM system, we used to have 4 departments participating in the system. This is OpenGov, and this is where residents and businesses would be able to get a building permit or apply for a dog license and everything in between. And now we have 18 departments that have forms, applications, and business processes online. We've gone from 6,100 records being created in calendar year 2022 to almost 15,000. And those are the applications, the processes, and the files that we've put up on the website. Obviously, we're collecting more revenue associated with those processes through the automated system. We've greatly increased things like inspections that have been performed in an automated format. And of course, permits and applications issued has almost doubled over that time frame. So this is really both targeting improving our business processes and looking at both financial efficiency and stability and business process and efficiency. And then when we think about financial stability kind of in the last area, we certainly know financial stability is more than just an annual balanced budget. It really gives us capacity to invest in the future. Because we've managed our financial position effectively, we can still fund strategic initiatives despite modest year-over-year budget increases. We're able to dedicate resources to critical infrastructure investments and service expansion, advancing towards our vision. So as we go into the fiscal year 26 budget process, we're able to continue to meet these 5 core commitments that have been set forth by the Select Board and the School Committee associated with the May of 2021 override. All our percentages are within the categories, and we're still able to provide modest or minimal strategic investment, but maintain service levels, which is always the goal year over year. So let's look at the numbers at a really high overview to start with. As I said, I wanted to provide the overview of how the override has been performing. We originally projected that we would need a second override for fiscal year 26, but fortunately we're all here and presenting a balanced budget without even needing to rely upon the override stabilization fund that has been in place. That has really allowed us to maintain a focus on the long-term fiscal stability. So this override is now projected to have a balanced budget 7 years since its inception. And we're seeing across the Commonwealth, a lot of other communities have significant financial struggles, but we still continue to benefit from those investments that residents made and agreed to in 2021. There have been 114 different override questions since fiscal year 22 across the Commonwealth. And actually, there's a great number of communities that have already had multiple overrides approved since we ask our override question. The difference that I can see is that we took a really long time stabilizing approach and didn't just go to the community to fill a 1-year gap. We took a step back, analyzed the previous 20 years at the time, and really found a path forward that could last at least 4 years at the time, but due to strong economic conditions in the town and efficiencies gained internally, we can see that we now have 7 years at this point that the override will provide for.
So on this slide, I'm going to highlight this slide highlights the contributions that have been made into the override stabilization fund since fiscal year 22. As of February 3rd, 2025, the current balance in the override stabilization fund is $9,714,845. In total, 5 contributions have been made into the fund at least once annually. I'd also like to highlight that within our financial model, our control point is on the expenditure side, not revenues. So this has allowed us to build up the stabilization fund balance to this level. Some communities identify how much revenue they'll have in a given year and then spend that much annually, and that can lead to drastic fluctuations, but the select board had the vision to control annual expenditures, and this has allowed for excess revenue to fund the override stabilization fund to this level, which provides for much more long-term financial stability. It's also important to assess the value that we provide to residents within these parameters, so I will now turn it over to Mr. Snowden to take a look at some comparable community data to walk through how we compare to other municipalities on value.
Could we take a break just for some questions that have
Sure.
come up? Milind, you had a question?
Yeah, I mean, if we go back to the internal transformation, right?
Sure.
I think that's great work, definitely. Are we tracking in terms of like how much SLA or manual work that has saved for, our employees, due to adoption of these automation and systems, and at the same time, how it created value for residents? Are we
Sure.
tracking that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have data for you specifically on like FTE like time reduction or FTE reduction. To this point, but we have started to really look at that kind of for the next phase of investments that we want to make. And those lie in some of the bigger, more cross-cutting business processes that we want to focus on, including accounts payable and payroll management. So in short, no, not on this work that we've done, but that's the key focus on really the next phase of this as we move forward.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I would suggest, because this is a great success story, and, I think we should track that to, communicate that to residents.
So that would include an ROI, a return on investment?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, yes, Dennis?
On the CI commercial exceeding the residential, were there any, like, one or two big projects that caused that? Is this more we have a lot of projects going on?
Well, the largest single project would be Centec North.
Yep.
So the sale of that town land, and then those three large commercial buildings that are going up there. But, just as substantial is the commercial development there at Edgemere Crossing and that mixed-use redevelopment. So those are probably the two largest projects that have hit the tax rate so far. And then, in the coming years is the completion of the building at 440 Hartford Turnpikes that will be Physique Instrumente's U.S. headquarters, and the portion of the building that will be developed at 50 Centec Boulevard, which is the UPS facility. Yeah.
Okay, and then another question is, how much commercial land do we have still available to be built on?
I don't know the acreage right off the top of my head, but it is still rather substantial. Yeah.
And are there pieces of residential zoning that we could turn commercial? I mean, one of the big things is we're building so many houses, and one way to not build houses is to change some of the zoning to commercial and possibly build some commercial there, depending what it is.
Yeah, I mean, that's an analysis that we haven't done yet, but we'll have to undertake. It probably would be more valuable to do once we are able to fully protect our commercial property by having a 10% meeting that 10% affordable housing threshold, which with some of the projects that are in the pipeline, we should be able to achieve in the next 3 to 5 years, but it's something that we should consider doing at that time.
So that means we don't have projections at this point as far as the CIP growth for the next couple of years?
We don't, but the Shrewsbury Development Corporation recently issued a request for proposals to conduct an economic development study and strategy, which will look into that.
I see. And is it still the part of our strategy to increase commercial growth as opposed to residential, or do you want to maintain a balance?
Well, right now, we're about 83% of our tax base is residential and 17% is commercial. So that is actually one of the slides that Mr. Snowden will go through. We're kind of on the lower end of that. Now, we still have great value in our commercial property as it compares to other communities. So, we just have a very large tax base to start with, over 9 billion in total assessed value. But, I mean, I think generally it is our goal to increase the commercial property base at least, if not faster than the residential base, because there's less costs associated with the services and other things that are provided to commercial property versus residential.
Just one follow-up on UPS. That's only 30% of that facility is gonna be in Shrewsbury. The rest is all gonna be in Grafton.
Correct.
What is the value we put on that 30%?
It'll be between 25 and 30 million.
Just on that 30%?
Correct. Yes.
And you feel they have given enough on that road construction to complete that project?
I think with all the contingencies, so they've committed about, a little over $4.5 million in hard dollars, and then a 15% contingency on top of that. So I do feel that we will be able to complete
Does that include any land taking on those four corners?
it does,
It does.
yeah, it does.
Have the abutters been notified yet?
No, they haven't. It's, we need to do full design, so we have a request for proposals out right now to bring a designer on board. But the cost does contemplate land taking. There's not a lot,
Yeah.
but there is.
Jumping back to UPS again too, we're still gonna provide the power and the water, and how about sewage?
No, so water and sewer will be from Grafton, but we are providing power and internet and that. Yeah.
And that's included in that $25-30 million value?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
No, the 25 to $30 million value is just the land, or the building assessed value.
Oh, okay.
That does not include the utility payments or anything like that.
Of course, we won't get any of the excise. That would be a nice,
That will,
nice
actually,
bonus.
we're trying to balance conversations with Grafton on how that will be managed, the excise payment. So
'cause that would be a nice bonus.
Yeah, because the address will be 50 Centec Boulevard in Shrewsbury, so we are working through an equitable way to do that, and that's the approach that we've taken on the whole project as far as how the building permits and the fees and all that stuff will be handled.
Thank you.
Yep.
Are we gonna talk later about the override fund, or is this a good time to talk? I don't know if you're gonna include.
Probably this is the best time to talk about it.
Okay. Well, and I do appreciate the strategy that was taken to put the money away to push off the override. And by 2030, we're still gonna be $17 million, down. So we're not putting any money in this year, and we're drawing down.
We're not drawing down either.
Well, no, I'm sorry. We're not putting any money, then after that, we'll be drawing down.
Correct.
17, 18, 19. So doesn't it seem, I mean, I know we put a lot of money away, we put 9 million plus away, but to put more in and I mean, last year we had $5 million we didn't expect to come in. We had we're having more revenue than we thought we were gonna have. I think it's our debt. Shift it over. Eventually, we're gonna have to know over override. I mean, everyone knows that, but shifting it over, putting some more money into it, I don't think it's a bad idea. Now, the whole budget sort of, we'll go over it, but just from my mindset, if we made extra $5 million, we're getting all this extra money in, and then we don't put anything in the override fund, knowing that there's millions in debt coming up.
So just tell me a little bit more about the debt. You're talking about the debt that we're gonna take on?
Correct.
We are proposing to exclude that debt, which, would be through additional taxation.
So we'll have to raise taxes.
It will not increase taxes, but taxes will be raised specifically for it, because we have debt declining, remember. So the debt from the proposed municipal facilities project will not exceed the debt that's falling off of the tax rolls.
And then we'll raise utilities as well,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
Because the debt service this year to next year is doubled. Is that right? It went 12 million to 25 million?
Why is it like that? I don't know why it's like that. That's not right.
Oh, yeah, something must have gotten updated. It should be going down.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when it
that's an
doubled,
error.
I circled it, I'm like, how is that doubling?
Yeah.
Nope, that's an error.
Yeah.
We'll fix that before.
Yeah.
Yep. No, it actually declines,
Yep.
by about $600,000 from
Mhm.
fiscal year 26 to 27. So I'm
Okay.
not, it must be pulling
Yeah.
the wrong cells from 27 through 30.
Right, because we have, I mean, we talked about, I don't know when the phosphorus money, we're going to have a phosphorus removal
Mm-hmm.
coming up, that's gonna be probably expensive. And, you know, obviously the DBW and these things, and so if we have that more revenue than we thought, I would like to see, now we've talked about this several times, more money put into the override stabilization, so we can keep pushing off that override, knowing that we're gonna have to vote on, we just voted on the big water, PFAS, then we have DPW, then we have phosphorus, and then we may have a school. It seems like that's gonna maybe be a lot of debt. That's all my thought, and then hit an override.
Sure. I understand. Yeah, I would just say that we don't have any recurring revenues to contribute to the override stabilization fund, right? We're using all available revenue that we have this year. The only funds that we would have to put in there, which would be free cash, or the general stabilization fund. And, while we could use that in the future, for operations, we just don't recommend putting non-recurring revenues into it.
Okay. It's just, I said that before, I just.
Understand, yep.
You know,
I kind of have a similar feeling, well, after reading it, but just jumping forward a little bit. I am very concerned with grants, both on the state and the federal level. And it seems to be the feeling, starting down in Boston, right up to the local, that everything seems to be in order. And I think it's gonna be a disaster, personally. The way it's going in Washington right now, we're gonna have some severe cuts, and then it's gonna start with the schools, and then it's gonna funnel down into the towns. And there's gonna be, some big slashing that's gonna have to be done on there. That's what I see from everything I hear and read and see of what they're doing down there. So I would be very concerned that if there's any possible way we can put more into savings to protect ourselves,
Well-
it's gonna be of the utmost importance.
Well, if you want to think of it as savings, the money's there, right? So it's not in override stabilization, but we still have $10.5 million in free cash.
Yeah.
We have our general stabilization fund at 5% of the operating budget, which is our policy level. So between free cash, the override stabilization fund, and the general stabilization fund, we have about $27 million in reserve assets in cash on hand right now. And I would kind of challenge anyone to, that's, I don't know, almost 20% of operating revenues that we need. Like, that's really healthy.
Oh, definitely. I don't,
And I understand everything that's going on in Washington, and I'm concerned about federal grants as well. And, there could be, the direct impact that I see on the community is rather limited, right? The most direct impact would be about $2.5 million that goes to the public schools. If there's a domino effect that Medicaid, Medicare, anything at the state level, like, that could be more impactful. It's hard to predict, but again, we could always have more, but I really think that with, the stabilization and reserves that we have now, they're higher than ever, and still very conservative on our revenue outlooks. Local receipts, as we share with you, we're predicting the use of, or we're allowing the use of $16.9 million in this model. We raised $18.2 million last year. So, you know, that's something that we can continue to use, you know, to our benefit. That's producing free cash every year, so it doesn't go away. We're not losing it. So I think there's still greater financial flexibility than we're showing on this slide, but I mean, I understand the concerns and appreciate it. Because once, you know, there is a part where once we get so much money in the override stabilization fund and we start drawing down upon it, right? Like timing to get that override passed is critical because we're using one-time revenues to plug the ongoing expenses. This model right now, from how we've played it out, is reasonable, right? Like if we're gonna put an override into effect for the timing of this, you know, we can ask an override that was less in value, less than $9.5 million, and still get 4 or 5 years out of it again. So we do think about that sustainability and the impact on the tax bills. And there's a lot of development interest in town right now. I mean, I don't know if anyone's taken the time to add it up, the projects that we've talked about that are permitted. You know, there's almost 1,000 housing units that, you know, have been proposed in the community. We have over 1 million square feet of commercial development that's been proposed, not permitted in the community. So there's, you know, if those projects come to fruition, there's new growth that isn't in our model that will come to fruition as well. So.
Did you have anything else?
No, I just got, you say 1,000, but that includes apartments, condo type development, not individual
Correct.
homes, because there's not that many lots left in the town right now if you look at the overall numbers.
Right, not single-family
Yeah,
homes. The
it's-
vast
you're
majority
talking
of those are multifamily.
Yeah.
Correct. Yep.
Dennis?
With, with what's going on in Washington, you know, as we all know, have you guys put any of that into this budget? Have you done a worst-case scenario, i.e. government, you know, significantly stops funding, building stops if funding stops? You know, tariffs could, you know, put a big crimp on growth in the U.S.
So we have the flexibility. So again, there's no direct federal aid or state aid in the municipal operating budget. Every dollar that we're spending is local tax revenues. The state aid is what the governor has approved or provided in her initial budget. You know, if we see a decline in motor vehicle purchases, things like that, we still have about 20% a buffer in the number that we're using for our local receipts number. So I think we could absorb that year over year. Again, the biggest direct federal subsidy that we receive right now is Title I and Title IX funding in education, and that's between $2.5 to $3 million.
Rajesh?
So thanks for that. So Title I is how much? Is like what's the Title I?
I don't know the split between the two. I'd have to go back and look.
Can we have a so with 2.5 on the school budget, but what else could be? Can we have a number or items that can be separated out if it's a big, so we know what we are looking at in the worst case scenario?
Sure, but just to be clear, what besides those two numbers would you want to see?
Right, in the town side, we don't have any impact on any of the direct or indirect funding from the federal government.
No.
No?
No. I mean, you know, the local receipt categories that, you know, you have on your list, you know, Medicaid reimbursement, I guess would be the only area. All of these are locally generated revenues. Motor vehicle, you know, excise taxes, penalties and interests, the landfill, you know, all the fees and departmental revenues are raised here locally, investment income, you know, we talked about that. Still super conservative. We've already achieved our budget goal this year after the first, you know, 6 months. There's not a direct fiscal risk with federal funding in the municipal budget itself.
So even with the motor vehicle excise tax, let's say if that has a humongous impact based on the tariffs and everything, maybe there's no new or significant slowdown in the purchase.
Sure, yep.
So that could have significant impact.
It could, but, you know, like I said, we're using $17 million, a little less than $17 million as our budget requirement or budget estimate, and we raised over $2 million more than that in fiscal year '24. So, I mean, we have 20% buffer already in that number from what we actually raised, you know, from July 1, 2023 to June 30th, 2024. We just issued motor vehicle commitment 1, which is the vast majority of recurring motor vehicles. It was 8% higher year over year. Like, there's no trend that's showing us that we should be concerned, but we're still conservative in the total revenue that we're using.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we should proceed with the presentation.
It's back to you then, Dave.
Okay, so we're going to go through a couple different comparable community slides now. There are 14 additional communities in addition to Shrewsbury. On the next couple slides, I think 7 slides, these are communities that we have been using in our budget process, both historical communities in the area and then some other municipalities that have similar metrics as the town of Shrewsbury. This first category is population density. So Shrewsbury has a population density of 1,876 residents per square mile, which is higher than the peer average of 1,710. This higher density suggests a vibrant, well-established residential community. And despite the potential for a larger commercial base, Shrewsbury's revenue model does not lean heavily on commercial sources, with the exception of the past 2 years in the growth in the CIP. Now we'll look at that again on this next slide here. All right. So this slide here is the commercial, industrial, and personal property percentage value of the total tax levy. So this is not the dollar value, it's the percentage of that CIP of the total tax levy. In terms of the composition of its tax levy, 18.85% of Shrewsbury's local tax revenue comes from commercial, industrial, and personal property sources, well below the peer average of 23.56. This indicates historically a deliberate and stable reliance on residential and other sources of revenue, which have been able to insulate the town from volatility often seen in the commercial market. Again, things have been changing in the recent years. All right. This next slide here is the tax levy per capita. The town's FY25 tax levy per capita is $2,877, significantly lower than the peer average of $3,556. This lower tax levy per capita reflects Shrewsbury's commitment in keeping the overall tax burden manageable for its residents. And the next slide will further complement this. This is the general fund expenditure per capita. Again, complementing the previous slide, the FY24 general fund expenditures per capita in Shrewsbury are $3,840, below the peer average of $4,333. Together, this slide and the previous slide suggests that Shrewsbury is both fiscally disciplined in its spending and effective in generating revenue without overburdening its taxpayers when compared to these other 14 communities. Alex is going to go into some detail on how the homeowner is viewed and their tax bill impact relates to the other towns as well next.
So this first slide depicts the average single-family tax bill as a percentage of Department of Revenue income per capita. DOR income per capita means the average income per person in a given area, calculated using data from DOR in that region. So essentially it divides the total income reported to DOR by the total population of the area, and is a tool to measure the average economic well-being of residents based on tax data collected by the Revenue Department. So in Shrewsbury, the average single-family tax bill as a percentage of DOR income per capita is 11.78%, placing it among the most favorable in the region. Only Woburn has a slightly lower rate at 11.7, while the peer average is 13.59. This next slide depicts the residential tax rate by our comparable communities, and the residential tax rate in Shrewsbury is 12.04, just a hair below the peer average of $12.33. This further reinforces the attractive tax environment for homeowners. And this next slide depicts the average single-family tax bill. In absolute terms, the FY25 single-family tax bill in Shrewsbury is $8,511, which is marginally below the peer average of $8,788. Although this figure is higher than the state average of $7,507, it aligns with Shrewsbury's overall regional competitiveness. So taking all this together, we believe Shrewsbury is a community that has struck a careful balance with its overall fiscal strategy. So first, with revenue stability, by historically maintaining a lower reliance on commercial taxes, Shrewsbury ensures that its revenue stream remains stable and less subject to market fluctuations. Secondly, with a competitive tax burden, the lower per capita tax levies and a modest single-family tax burden enhance the town's appeal for both residents and potential new homeowners. And then lastly, efficient public spending. With general fund expenditures per capita also below the peer average, we demonstrate fiscal discipline that supports efficient service delivery without excess. So the town's ability to maintain lower tax burdens while delivering essential services offers a compelling example of balanced municipal management, one that prioritizes stability, efficiency, and community appeal. So that completes our analysis of our comparable communities, and I will now turn it back over to Dave to talk about FY26 priorities as they relate to the strategic plan.
Yeah, cool. Just to break the questions.
How, could you remind me, how are the comparable communities chosen?
Yeah. So we have the historic communities, which are the ones surrounding us, and then the other communities we looked at, budget, population, I'm trying to pick all the other categories. It could have been like stabilization funds, general funds. So there are some socioeconomic factors that are similar. So if you look at, so Natick and Westford and Chelmsford, Billerica, Braintree, Marlborough, and Woburn, those are all communities that on a socioeconomic level are more comparable to the town of Shrewsbury, whether it's population or spend or operating budgets. And the surrounding towns of Grafton, Westboro, Northborough, those are towns that we've historically had as data sets just because they are our closest neighbors.
So this is kind of our choice of comparison versus when we look at the school budget and their comparisons, that's set in a different way, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Rajesh?
So to the follow up on that, so DESI provides school comparison comparable districts, right? So does DLS provides any comparable districts for us on the town side?
DLS provides a significant and robust database, and it allows the municipalities to compare on any metric that they then want. So they're not necessarily saying that these are the ones that you should compare to, but these are ones that if you're looking at solely population or just density or annual operating budget spend, you can pick the categories and generate the data set yourself.
That's good. So what's Woburn is doing different than what we are doing? It looks like Woburn is consistently lower than where we are. Did we look into those individual towns which are better performing in one of the other categories than us?
I think Woburn swings to the extremes on either side of the charts. One of the main reasons is because they have a split tax bill.
Yep.
So their residential tax bill is much lower than their commercial tax bill.
So Westboro
Tax
also
rate, I'm sorry.
Westboro also has split tax bill, right?
No,
They do not.
1629 for all properties.
Okay.
Yep, so on this chart here, the municipalities indicated with an asterisk are the ones that represent split tax bills. Off the top of my head, some of them were $4 to $7 higher for non-residential tax bills.
Thank you.
You can proceed.
All right. There's a lot on this slide. I just wanted to touch base quick, and this sort of bounces off the comments that Mr. Mizikar made earlier regarding the success so far in tying financial aspects to the strategic plan. So the FY26 budget priorities were provided to department heads, and they were encouraged to develop the most robust version of their budgets they could that would tie to items under engaged and connected, exceptional, thriving, prosperous, and sustainable. And again, these are reviewed each year with the town manager and the select board, and then they are then communicated to the department heads as they develop their budgets.
All right, so we will now look at revenue. So total revenue for FY26 is projected at $638,908. This is a decrease of $4,022,020, or 2.11% from the FY25 budget. So on this slide, I'd like to highlight the changes between the FY25 budget and fiscal projection 1 for each revenue category. So first, starting off with the tax levy, this is an increase of approximately $3.35 million, and this is reflective of the Proposition 2.5 increase on the base tax levy, which totals $2,565,240. It includes new growth estimated at $1,350,000 and a reduction of $637,075 within the exempted tax levy. The next revenue source is state aid. This increase of $573,067 is based on the figures provided in the initial state budget filed by the governor at the end of January. These figures are subject to change as the state budget makes its way through the House and Senate and will be updated, if necessary, in fiscal projection 2. Utility revenue across all 4 utility funds is projected to decrease by $3,493,819. Utility fund revenues are evaluated and based on the currently anticipated needs to operate the enterprise funds for the upcoming fiscal year, and these decreases are primarily due to long-term, multi-year capital improvement plans that were approved in the FY25 budget, so the funding needed to make those significant capital investments is already in place. The next category, local receipts, we are increasing budgeted local receipts by just over 1.4 million, or 9% over FY25. As this committee discussed in the fall during the review of the FY26 revenue manual, local receipts have performed exceptionally well over the past few fiscal years, consistently exceeding budgeted figures by at least double-digit percentage figures. Next is free cash. This is a reduction of $2,514,605 over FY25. The current free cash estimate for FY26 reflects the planned use of free cash to support 4 annual warrant articles totaling $413,000, one-time expenditures in the operating budget totaling $207,000, and $2 million for the FY26 capital improvement plan, which supports 19 projects across 10 departments. I'd also like to highlight that the FY25 free cash figure does represent free cash allocated at the May annual town meeting and the November special town meeting. And this included some larger funding allocations, such as $2.1 million for general stabilization and about $1.6 million that was allocated to the Municipal Facilities Optimization Committee project. The next category is the reduced levy. This reduction is based on no longer receiving a pilot payment from Selco for IT services. The town and Selco have developed a managed service agreement, which reflects much more accurate costs of IT services, and those costs are now completely reflected in the operating budget. The last category is other available funds. This is a reduction of about $3.2 million, and the value of this reduction is primarily based on some CPC projects and article closeouts that were approved at the May town meeting and fall special town meeting. This figure will be revised as needed as the town meeting warrant is developed and the CPC finalizes their project recommendations for CPA funds. So I will now turn it back over to Dave to review fiscal projection 1 expenditures.
Could we just take a
Yep.
quick break for questions on revenues? I had a question on the utility revenue.
Mhm.
I mean, for the reasons that you explained, the capital projects, does that imply a decreased burden on residents as far as the collection of these revenues are concerned? Or is it accounting?
No, we use one time. So,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead, Dave.
This is typical in a couple different situations. By fiscal projection 2, we may have article closeouts as well. So those would be projects that we may close out and then use for additional projects going forward. But this is a balanced budget at this point in time for those utilities.
It doesn't, so it doesn't really, so this reflects a reduction in revenues that we had on hand. So in capital reserve accounts or other cash, not necessarily revenue that will be raised
Yeah.
during this fiscal year. So we'll be spending less revenue, but that total revenue that was expended in previous years was some cash that was on hand. So utility bills will not be going down, with this.
Yeah, just.
Any
for
other questions on
example-
revenue?
Just one clarification, because we have, what, $27 million in state aid coming in?
Mhm.
What is that state aid? Because we were just told, well, we only got about $2 or $3 million at risk. I would propose a bigger portion of 27 million could be at risk if the state loses a lot of their funding.
So the vast majority, over $24 million of that is Chapter 70 aid, which is education aid.
Yep.
And the majority of that is raised through income tax revenues and the enhanced income tax over $1 million. So I would say that's still Massachusetts revenue, that's not federal. Again, there could be a chain of events where the state does something, but, not directly tied to federal funding. Unrestricted general government aid, which is what flows in theory to the municipal budget, is raised from lottery revenue. So, and again, this is the estimate that the governor is using in her budget. So, not saying that it's without risk, but there hasn't been even. There hasn't even been any discussion that the governor is concerned with her budget at this point because of what's going on in Washington. So, yeah, understand the question, but I feel these are primarily Massachusetts generated revenues.
Okay, I'm just,
Yep,
Yeah.
of course. Yep.
David?
So when we have the budget, the $186 million, and you said it was a reduction from last year, it's not like to like. So last year at this time, so we're still over what we asked for at this time, but less than what we spent for the entire year. Does that make sense? So like to like, we're actually about $3 million more at this time, but we're less than what we spent all year. Is that fair?
Correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
So the operating budget itself is increasing, right?
Right.
But there's some, additional considerations, like we haven't received the funding plan for community preservation projects yet, so we're just using an estimate. As Mr. Snowden said, we are working our way through the bidding process and capital plan finalization for our utilities and highway projects. So these numbers will change as, they historically do between fiscal projection 1 and fiscal projection 2. Likely expenditures will get close, if not exceed, FY25 level, but, they may be slightly below year over year.
Okay.
Any other questions on revenue? Otherwise, we can proceed. Okay.
All right. So here we will look at the expenditure summary for the fiscal projection 1 of FY26. We have this represented as both a pie chart and a table. FY26 expenditures are projected to total $186,638,908 across all funds, which is $4,022,020, or 2.11 less than the expenditures planned in the current fiscal year FY25. The operating budget for municipal and educational expenses, shared operating support, and debt service totals $160,991,569. Capital improvement projects across the general fund are projected at $2 million. Offsets and charges are projected at $1,540,142. And currently anticipated program and project funding through warrant articles is estimated to total $2,197,675. And $300,000 of that will be transferred to the general stabilization fund, which will help maintain policy level for the town and the stabilization fund. At the time of publication, the general stabilization balance is just shy of 8 million at 7,971,686. Expenditures for all municipal departments, including utilities and the school department, total $180,101,957, which is a 1.19% increase over FY25. Direct utility operating expenditures, including water, sewer, solid waste, and stormwater, are proposed at $19,110,388, which is a decrease at this time of $3,815,979 from FY25. So we can quickly look at the same expenditures of the general fund by functional area here now. And when we look at functional areas in the budget, we typically break them out in these categories: administration and finance, public safety, which will include police, fire, and emergency management, community development, which would have planning, building inspector's office, planning board, board of appeals, the retirement, DPW general fund. So these would be non-utility DPW departments like highway, engineering, and the like. Human services, which is library, recreation, senior center. Then we have the debt service, education, and then shared operating support. Just shown here is broken out. When we look at the admin and finance later, operating support will be included, as that's sort of how it is typically organized. What we'll see, if you look all the way on the far side under the FY26 FP1 column, you can see the percentage change year over year and the dollar change. As we go through the different functional areas, we'll start to highlight some of these items that might be a little bit larger. For example, the community development, that is a part of the strategic approach of this year, funding the climate action plan and the master plan, and we'll touch base on that. But you can see across most of the departments, the percentage increase are fairly modest across the board. All right.
So I'll take just a minute to talk about some broad overview of changes or highlights in the municipal side of the budget. In total, we're proposing municipal expenditures to be just shy of 3.5% greater than fiscal year 25. That's a total increased spending of $1,213,522. Like most governments, our expenditures are heavily saturated in salary and wages, so almost 80% of the additional funding is going into salary and wage categories. I do want to note that there's only one additional new FTE that's proposed in all municipal departments. And we are bringing 2.15 FTE into the operating budget, the general fund, that were previously funded by outside sources of funding, including American Rescue Plan Act funds and other non-general fund revenues like a recreation revolving account and library state aid. So in total, to get to this level, there had to be just over $2.6 million cut from department requests, which we'll go through in some of the subsequent slides to tell you how we got to the balanced budget.
Could I ask one quick question there?
Sure.
In reference to the funding from other sources, addition of personnel. Are we done now on the American Rescue Plan? Have we funded all those people?
Alex?
Yep, so, FY '26 will be the final year funding salary position.
Because you've had the fire department,
Mhm.
you've had recreation, and you've had a couple others going through the book there.
Yep.
That you were bringing on to the payroll.
Yep.
And I just wondered, is that the
Yep.
end of it, or have we?
So within the fire department, there is one firefighter that will be funded out of ARPA in FY '26. So that position will be need to fully brought in.
So then we're level.
Yes.
Those funds are gone. Okay, thank you.
So we will have to fund it going forward, these positions?
So when ARPA was paying, was that just salary, or was it all costs of that position?
The salary.
Just salary, so this, bring those FTEs down won't increase the budget for healthcare or anything else, it's just a salary? Thank you.
And how many FTEs did you say that, the new FTEs we're bringing in that we're funding on our own?
2.15.
So 2.15 that were previously funded by other sources and one new additional.
I see.
But that was just for this year. That's not counting previous years. 'Cause we funded and closed out some of them in the past.
So off the top of my head, I think maybe 7 positions were funded with ARPA.
It was originally 12 or 14 positions we had.
No, I think it was around 7, like Alex
Yep.
said, yeah.
4 in the fire department, the communications coordinator position, a position in planning economic development.
Okay.
So just going back to, so the increase in salaries and the 78.09% that we're giving to salaries and wages, that is funding of the people who are transferring over, or?
No,
No, so that's a combination of contractual salaries with the unions. That is a 2% cost of living adjustment for non-union employees. In
That-
addition to the.
Then
the
like
transfer.
requisite adjustments in overtime, line items and training line items that are impacted by hourly wage rates and things like that to mirror the cost of living adjustment, things like.
The value of the 2.15 is about $250,000.
So,
Yeah, Jim.
so you've onboarded 7, we've got 2 more this year, and to Gene's question, you got 1 more next year, and then we'll be done.
Correct.
And on the capital expense side, like on the vehicle side, a new vehicle acquisition, replacing the old ones, so it looks like there is a request from the departments. So why would we use ARPA funds to fund FTEs rather than vehicles?
We did have to have an ARPA funding plan set and approved previously. So that was due by the end of last year, right?
Yeah, ARPA funds are no longer available to be allocated for new things, but we're in a 2-year window of time where they could fund positions if they were created prior to December 31st. So as of December 31st, 2024, the funds are frozen in the categories that they were put in and reported to the federal government at that time.
As of this end of this year, every dollar is used, expensed?
Yeah, every dollar, of the $11.6 million in ARPA funds, every dollar has been allocated.
And we have until December 2026 to fully expend.
Okay.
But it just all has to meet their definition of obligation, which for salaries, it's somebody has to be in that position before the end of last calendar year. If they leave, that position can be filled, but it just has to be a
Right.
position in place.
Thank you.
Just a quick follow-up, can you comment a little bit more on the 1 FTE needed in HR, just with, I know
Sure.
there's a lot of changes there in the last year.
Yep, so, that's continuing just to right-size the department, and there's some aspects of some strategic initiatives that I will talk about on the next slide that complement that, but it's a professional, technical level position, it's a human resources coordinator position to balance some of the workload and then give the departmental leadership the opportunity to be a little bit more strategic.
Thank you.
So that leads really nicely into, One of the funding requests that's included within the town manager's budget that Mr. Snowden will point out as we go through is a $250,000 one-time funding request to really try to drive efficiency and improve performance through how we operate. So it continues along the lines of those three categories that I spoke about at the beginning. So accelerating our digital transformation, this really continue to drive business processes away from what I'll characterize as really expensive human-based business operations and trying to drive them into our enterprise resource planning software platform. Things like payroll processing is still heavily paper in town and school operations. Accounts payables is still very heavy from incoming invoices to outgoing payments, and other opportunities that we can further exploit through business process enhancements. So we're looking to use this funding to get us over some bumps or humps or obstacles to be able to speed our the enhancement of these processes. So we've been working with our ERP provider, which is Tyler Technologies, but we need to really kind of accelerate and get to it, get to these outcomes as soon as possible. Because if you reflect back on the highlights, there's not really a lot of strategic investments that are being made. If we're going to live within the expenditure caps and we're going to live in this high inflationary area and era, and we have a cost of living adjustment of 2% that's really consuming 78% of all new funding, there's just not a lot left to make strategic investments through. So we want to re-entrench in the efficiency of our operations and find opportunities to at least mitigate costs going forward, if not save. The same with enhancing partnerships and shared service arrangements. So kind of a renewed look at where we share services with other communities. We have shared service arrangements in public health, some aspects of our building inspection, and veteran services. We're looking to make some changes within our public health shared services arrangements that I think will drive greater efficiency, provide the same, if not better, services to residents, and allow us to leverage better regional partnerships than we currently have right now. We want to look at how we can move to streamline emergency dispatch communications. We're still not unified in dispatch. Where do we go with that? And then as we bring on emergency medical services, as we introduce our own ambulance services, there's a lot of administrative functions that go with that. Fire service, who would operate EMS, is highly regionalized as far as their mutual aid. So what regional partnerships could we leverage on the administrative aspects of emergency medical services to not incur costs and potentially have revenue positive business line for emergency medical services, which is possible, which could offset other costs within the fire department, which we weren't able to fund in this year's budget. And it's really not only enhancing the processes, but is there a way that we can transition to more horizontal integration of our core support functions? Look at customer service. Right now, we're very vertically oriented when it comes to customer service. Every department has some level of FTE that services residents at the counter. The more streamlined we can become with our customer resource management tool and our enterprise resource planning software, and have more standardized processes, the less nuance there is. So the fewer, we can train people deeper and go into a more consolidated customer service environment. Maybe like a 311 center, maybe use AI to, build responses through very small language models and chatbots to service residents without a lot of human integration or involvement. But, how do we look at payroll? How do we look at AP as far as where it's situated in the organization, just not how we do it? So we're asking for this kind of as seed money so we can explore these opportunities with our other regional partners, but also technology firms and consultants to really, again, at least mitigate costs in the future, if not save money. So I
I have a
will,
question from Jean.
One quick follow-up. Have you made a decision on the ambulance?
yes, we are moving forward with instituting a basic life support ambulance within town in partnership with UMass, but it will be a Shrewsbury truck,
One?
one to start with.
Now, right now, UMass is servicing with two ambulances.
One always in the station, but yeah, I mean, at times
But
too. Yep.
Now you're starting to see more and more of surrounding towns in town here.
Mhm. Yep.
You see Boylston all the time, their ambulance is in town.
Yep.
I've seen Northborough, Westborough on there, so.
So
Is that
UMass
gonna be
isn't
enough?
UMass isn't going away.
No, I understand that,
Yep.
but,
But we will start with one. So that would be that one additional truck in the region, and then, you know, we want to kind of walk before we run. It takes 2 years of operations to be able to get certified from basic life support to advanced life support ambulance operations. So one probably won't be the end of it, but that is our plan of starting.
and have you looked at the big picture? Because there's gonna be an awful lot of additional training, because you've gotta have a paramedic,
We're-
plus the EMTs, and,
That's what we're working on right now. We're building the business model and the human capital model that we need for it. We're having conversations with the fire union, and we're deciding, you know, there's two main paths. Do we have an integrated approach where we have firefighter EMTs and firefighter paramedics, that some shifts they're on fire suppression and sometimes they're on emergency medical? Or do we run a parallel operation where we have EMTs and paramedics that solely dedicate themselves to the emergency medical services and are never responsible for suppression? So there's positives and negatives to both. That's we're in that exploration phase right now. It's our goal to have emergency medical services within the first quarter of calendar year 2027.
and have you got any estimated cost, what the initial cost is gonna be?
Not off the top of my head. Not that I can share with you right now. Yeah.
Thank you.
So one question I had, Kevin, you did mention AI as far as part of the seed money you're asking for to research digital transformations, and I did go a little bit ahead, and I did see there's some unfunded requests for FTEs.
Yeah.
So does that include, like, maybe, if not replacing humans, but augmenting? I mean, you did mention chatbots
Yeah.
and all that, but what about routine work that we can't afford as far as new FTEs going in the future?
Yeah, I sure
AI
hope.
a possibility?
I sure hope so. Yeah, I mean, I think there's an amazing opportunity that lies for all of us in the world to take advantage of AI, and we're on that journey. You know, we're participating with other municipalities and private sector entities to assess where we are and our capabilities and our readiness. And there's the discussion in the municipal marketplace is how can it be used? AI is not being, robustly used in any municipal environment. I'll be honest with you, I was, had a call today with a startup CEO looking to explore opportunities to partner and test, so there's plenty of opportunities, and we're engaged in that process, and we're actually partnering with 10 other communities and a large consulting firm in the middle of March, and having a local government AI summit here in Shrewsbury at the public library to just try to be out front and take advantage of it to save costs in the future.
Somebody had a question?
I did have a question on, is there a difference with the EMS to have full-time, EMS versus full-time fire? I'd assume the fire suppression would be a higher paying position.
It does, in some ways it is, yes. Fire is higher. Like we don't have any firefighters who are EMTs or paramedics on staff.
Right.
So, there is that balance, is if you're gonna require that, overall, you're probably gonna pay more per FTE versus having a differentiation in salary and wages. Obviously, different workloads and things like that in the parallel model. But if you go to the integrated model, one thing it does provide, if you have a larger fire suppression need at any given time, you have more people on that, it is truly a balance, a give and a take. Yeah.
We can proceed.
All right, it's your data. So on this slide, we have some of the, I wanted to represent the total reduction or unfunded requests from department heads. Again, department heads were encouraged under the budget guidance to identify all all strategic plans that would meet and align with the town strategic plan. And this slide lets you see that there were reductions across every budget within town, not solely focused on one specific part. And this value of 1.7 million encompasses both salary and wage FTE requests and operational expenses across the departments. And Alex will go into some of the FTE requests next.
So this slide reflects new FTE requests that were requested by town departments, but unable to be funded in the FY26 budget. So in total, 13.5 FTEs are requested across 10 departments, and this does include a variety of full-time and part-time positions. So the total value of FTEs requested was $1,037,757, and this figure is included in the bottom line total reduction that was highlighted on the previous slide.
David?
So these are the ones that we did not fund, correct?
Correct.
Do you know, for like the last 4 years, how many additional FTEs the school has had?
I don't know about this.
We could find that out. but we don't-
It's in that book.
And I'm bringing it up because I think, I haven't liked the model we're in, and this probably shows it best, where we have siloed budgets. Instead of looking and saying, okay, we can hire 5 people this year, what do we need? There's very possibly in the last 4 or 5 years, with the probably dozens of people the school has hired, and we can't hire some of these people, maybe it would have been better for the community to hire one of these instead of one of those. But without looking at it as a holistic view and a siloed view, I think the model has caused us not to get some of these positions, and some of these look like they would be beneficial for our town, we'll say. And nothing against the school department, I'm more talking about the modeling we have of segregated budgets that don't intersect. If that makes sense, because what I had is, the school's up to almost 1,000 people, and I would bet you in the last 4 years, they hired dozens. Right? And so were those dozens of those people, I'm sure all of us could find someone else in another department, be it TPW, police, fire, that may have been better for the town to hire that year. But we didn't, because of the budget model. So I bring that up because as we talk about the budget model, I do think we have to look at the budget as a whole more and decide on positions more holistically, instead of giving departments sort of a set budget increase and allowing them to hire people that they may not need as much as we need another side of the house. If that makes sense? You know what I'm saying? Instead of saying, you have this money, hire who you want, even though there's need over here for it.
Well, there's need in the school department when they're hiring. I mean, they're not just hiring teachers to add, our school sizes, class sizes are going up, so they're not keeping up
So
with that.
but we hired dozens and dozens of people.
And we laid off dozens and dozens of
Wait,
people over the
no,
years.
no.
So we replaced.
We've hired dozens and dozens of people, and the student populations remained flat.
They laid off a lot a while ago.
But we
So-
gained back a lot since
And,
we arrived.
yeah,
No,
but we can argue this during the budget meeting.
But this, as the budget model goes, I think we need to look at the budget, again, as everybody's all in the town.
But does the town manager, you say how much you can split to each one? I mean, we didn't say we're giving the school every year 62% or whatever it is. That's done at the select board and town manager level.
It is, right? I mean, I appreciate Mr. Remington's comments. Like, there's, the part that I would just respond to is there's a governance part of, that goes along with that, right? With the two elected bodies that are responsible, you know, for those functions, right? And there is conversations between them. We have very much taken the baseline plus increment approach each year, and that with a larger school budget base and a larger percentage increase, there are more resources there. So I understand what you're saying. There is the governance part of how that gets worked out as well.
But
I
it's
don't know if that
also,
makes sense or not.
we have the responsibility when we go through these, we can say, we don't agree with the school budget, right? It's too high. We can vote against that.
Absolutely.
And that can get, voted down at town meeting. Probably won't, but it could be. Same with the other budget. We just built one of the biggest police stations around for the police department. I drive by that every day and I see plenty of empty space up there. We put in all these offices, that's not fully at capacity and probably never will be. So we spend money everywhere, and when we think at the time is important. We chose to build a police station. I voted for it. So, in the schools, we can choose as a committee or an individual to not support what they're doing on it.
So it's not the school, it's any department, which, I don't know, how much is the school part of our whole budget? Over 60%, right? 65% if you take into all the retirement and that and the debt, right? It's a massive part of our budget.
Yeah.
They're increasing at 4.75%, everyone else is increasing at 3%, okay? And so when you silo them, that budget should not be done, you get a 5% increase, a 3% increase, 2% increase forever. It should be done by need.
Well,
Let me finish. Budgets should be done by need. Some years, some departments are gonna need more money, and some years are gonna need less. And by having a model that gives a increase every year at a certain rate, especially to our largest department, it is not the model I think I would like to continue. And I'm using this as an example to show where the town can bring on one person for the whole municipal government, right? But the school bring on multiple people every year. Is it honestly that best way to do it? No. All those new FTEs should be put on the table and they should be decided where they go.
Just,
And it would-
Your
just
opinion.
one point of correction though, right? From a funding perspective, it's actually 3.15, right? Because we've hired the people, but we are funding them through a different source. So we're increasing on the budget side on the town by 3.15, not by 1.
What, one new position, and the other ones we're bringing over. So we've already paid the retirement, we've already paid the pensions, it's just a salary bringing over, correct? But even if it was 4, the school's bringing, so my whole point is, I don't like it when a siloed group, whatever it is getting resources, and I think it should be a holistic budget. I think the town should look at the amount of money we have and say, what is the need? Sometimes the school department might be 5 and 6%, sometimes it's 3%, sometimes the police is 2%, sometimes it's 7%. Each year, your budget has to be different by the need you have at that moment.
Well, first
And
of all,
not just, in the future, you're gonna get this
I
increase.
believe the 4.5 came out of the override, actually, right? Did we not say the school could take up to 4.5 or 4.75 a year?
475.
4.75. So that is what we agreed to as a town when we voted on it.
They are at 4.3 this year.
Right.
Well, actually, in the March 16th, 2001 memo, the educational operation increase was up to 4.25 annually, and then it got increased after that.
No.
Well, that, I'm just saying the memo that came out.
No, the provisions of the full commitment is 4.25% base increase for education up to 4.75, and municipal is 3.5% up to 4. It's in the full document.
That's what we voted on and that's what we put in. So your argument is good in that we should, going forward, think of these things, and maybe we say next time there's an override, we put more towards
Yeah.
the municipal side.
And like I said last year at the budget, when we were voting on the budget, we guaranteed 4 years, we did it.
Yep.
Right? But now we're not in the 4th year anymore. And guaranteed increases to someone's budget for the future, it doesn't make sense. In the business world, no one says, your department will receive this increase every year to your budget, don't worry about it.
But again, we
Because
can
it's by
say
need.
here in this body,
And-
we
and-
don't support 4.5%, 4.25%, 3% going to the schools, and we think it should be used
Right.
elsewhere. There is no guarantee that they're gonna get that money. We, the select board and everyone else can change that. Or we could just vote it down at town meeting.
And you're saying what I'm saying. Let's no longer give automatic increases to anybody. Let's look at what the need is for each department, and we give them the money based on their need.
I think that's what we've done every year, personally.
Yeah, Rajesh had a comment.
Yeah, so I think I agree we have to look at the whole more holistically, but then it also, when it comes to school and the down, I think school has much more mandated services than other part of the things, right? So some of them we can't control. When it's some English learning assistant is needed, it's needed as by governed by the state, they see, right? So there's no flexibility there, whereas in the town side, we can have that flexibility and then have it appropriated at the right time.
If they need it, they need it. But if they don't need it, they don't need it.
Yeah.
Right?
Right, exactly. So if whatever the FTE, I think with the 4 FTE that school had this year is mandated by the state. So that there's no way we can bypass
And they
that.
had 12 point something last year. Again, all I'm saying is, I don't want to go into this guaranteeing them no less than this and no more than that to any department. Because again, some departments' needs are going to be higher, and some departments are going to be lower.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of positions that were asked for, and probably some very good need there. But because of the model is, and because the increase in the municipal government is so small, we're not able to bring them on.
So,
So we're all kind of saying the same thing, let's do it by need. That's fine, I'm good with that.
so with the year-over-year requests, I think we do get these requests. Obviously, in good faith, we want to expand everyone's own department. So year-over-year, how much of these requests are approved or are put on hold? Do we know? Do we track those?
We could go back and look at department requests to, final budgeted year over year. I don't know off the top of my head. I mean, I think this is a normal year, right? It doesn't feel very different. We're always, I think kind of anecdotally in the office, we're kind of always looking to cut about $2 million from the budget request. That's just kind of how it plays out. We've increased some municipal staff since the override, which has been very beneficial, a lot in the public safety areas, and, other areas as well. And it is true, we are bringing 3.15 additional FTE in, because that $240,000 associated with the 2.1 that's currently out of the budget. Otherwise, would have been available to fund some of these if that's what we chose at the time.
Right, but I guess my point is, when we're building the budgets, your group, select board, they all think which way they want to put it.
Correct, yep,
So
Yep.
and they do that by what you think is the need.
correct.
Jim?
So we do by need every year. It's just, some people have different view on what's needed more. You have a view that's probably the municipal, fire, and police.
Well, no, I don't know until they tell me what they need. So you can't say it's done by need. If you give them a base, it can't go any less than 4.25. All I'm saying is, some departments are gonna need more one year and less another year. And we need more flexibility in our budgeting.
Yeah, and the next override, we should get that.
Well, we should get it now. We should now start that. Because we're going into debt.
We are in debt.
Right. So let's do it now.
Jim, you had.
Can we change that in the override?
I'm sorry.
Can we change the override now and say for the remainder 3 years that we could actually not guarantee the 4.25? Or
Yeah,
is
that's a
that-
policy decision between the select board and the school
Right.
committee. Yep.
Ken, we talked a lot about strategic priorities, your expectations of your leadership in each department. When you see these sort of requests, does it surprise you?
When I see that,
And what I mean by that is like, are they buying into what your expectations are? I mean,
Yeah.
it's
yes.
a pretty, expensive list when you look at it. And then just one other comment I picked up on was, just even in the building inspector, if I heard you correctly, we're also leaning on other towns maybe to assist where need be. Now, in fairness, I also saw the number of inspections we're doing, so I can see the larger picture. But I'm just curious on your take when you see this come in. Is it like anticipated?
Yep.
Is it a negotiating tool for maybe next year? Like just a little bit more color to
Yeah, I mean,
where we need to be.
I really feel like if we had 1,037,757, I would fund these.
You would?
Honestly, it
Okay.
is a resource constraint, and I mean, honestly, I think any of all of us, you know, here at the table and the department heads associated could tell you how it fits into the strategic plan, and I'll just pick a couple, like those two, the police captains are, you know, a historic kind of understaffing, right, of our command staff within the organization. The two police officers would provide for traffic division within the police department, something that is solely needed, right? All of our, what a traffic division does, it dedicates people to traffic, you know, enforcement on every shift versus when we have the opportunity and we're not responding to a 911 call to run radar or something like that. Let me pick an obscure one, like the fleet maintenance technician, right? Fleet has grown. We do a lot of our, you know, we have, you know, certified mechanics. We do a lot of our work in-house. When we send it out, it's actually more expensive. So this would be, you know, that opportunity. Yeah, I mean.
That's good.
Yeah.
You answered it. That makes sense to me. Thank you.
Then just a quick follow-up then. So it was a decision to not start drawing down on the override fund, right? Because that was the other option we could have done this year potentially, right?
Yeah, but we've maintained that expenditure cap, right? We've really looked at, you know, what, you know, there's a model in there. How much revenue do we have year over year? And then if we have revenues in addition to what we had, then we can go to the higher expenditure levels. But we, you know, we're in a position where this year, not relying upon any of the override stabilization, you know, we've budgeted with the ongoing means that we have.
Any other comments on this?
Nope.
Okay, guess we can proceed.
All right, so now we'll start diving into fiscal projection 1, budget figures at the function area level.
So first, we'll take a look at the admin and finance functional area, less shared operating support, which will be shown on the next slide. So for this function area group right now, there's about $534,000 proposed to increase in the budget lines across all these departments. You'll notice that there are some that are going down, some that are going up. The $376,000 in the town manager's office includes the $250,000 for the strategic initiative. Also 0.4 of the communication position being brought from ARPA into that fund. And HR also has the addition of the professional technical staff. Besides those, this is a fairly level service budget across most of the departments. The reduction in elections and registrations is fairly cyclical depending on the election year. The operating support and MIS numbers have been moving around, and we'll go into greater detail on that when we go over shared operating support.
So shared operating support are operating expense costs shared between all town departments and the school department. This includes the employee assistance program, employee health insurance, Medicare costs, unemployment compensation, and general insurance coverage. So shared operating support is projected to increase $1,390,500 over FY25. And as you can see on this slide, the most significant increase is within the health insurance line. This is just based on anticipated enrollments and projected premium rates. Additionally, within the FY26 budget, there are a couple new line items that are being brought under the shared operating support umbrella that have previously existed outside of shared operating support, but still in the general fund. It's the last 4 line items on this slide, and the most significant expenditure-wise is retirement. This consists of the town's pension and annuities obligation, as well as OPEB, which is other post-employment benefits. These 2 lines have a total combined budget of $2.6 million. So for FY26, the reason why we've done this is we've just taken a closer look at the original allocations within the override model and have realigned these few categories by bringing them into shared operating support, as they are truly shared costs across town and school departments.
All right. Now we'll take a look at public safety, which includes police, fire, and emergency management. Across these three departments, there is a projected $630,000 increase. There is one firefighter coming from ARPA to the general fund in that $148,000 increase in the fire. And the police line item, most notably, is contractual agreements that we are anticipating across all of the different unions, whether it's dispatch and the police officers themselves. Otherwise, this is a fairly level service budget for public safety.
Next functional area is the Department of Public Works, and this functional area has oversight over Shrewsbury's public infrastructure, including roadways, parks, cemetery, and utilities. The DPW is comprised of Public Works Administration, public buildings, weights and measures, forestry, engineering, fleet maintenance, highway, street lighting, cemetery, and parks maintenance. The four utility funds, water, sewer, stormwater, and solid waste, are not included in this section and will be reviewed later in the presentation. So overall, the DPW functional area is projected to increase $398,410, or 3.96% over FY25. The most significant increases are within the Public Buildings Division at $237,002. This increase is mostly tied to contractual salary obligations, increased natural gas costs, increased costs of supplies, as well as anticipated increases to the cleaning contract for the high school that expires on June 30th, 2025.
Right. Community development. This includes expenditures across Conservation Commission, Planning Board, Board of Appeals, Building Inspector, and the Planning and Economic Development departments. In total, there is a projected increase of $284,273 across these five departments. The most notable increase is the $226,612 in Planning and Economic Development. This increase is significantly tied to the funding of two major projects, the Master Plan and the Climate Action Plan. In Massachusetts, a master plan is required to be a comprehensive townwide plan that contains the following elements: land use, natural and cultural resources, open space and recreation, economic development, housing, public facilities and services, transportation, and implementation. The master plan was last updated in 2016, and it's recommended that this policy document be updated and reviewed every 10 years. Additionally, the funding for the Climate Action Plan will fund consulting services to continue moving the town in the direction of meeting sustainability goals. Excluding these two projects, the department has a net reduction of approximately $20,000 related to an assistant planning and economic development director position being partially funded with ARPA for FY26. This position will be brought fully into the general fund in FY27.
The Human Services functional area is comprised of the Health Department, the Council on Aging, Veteran Services, the Commission on Disabilities, the Library, and Recreation. This functional area is projected to increase $177,323, or 6.14%. Significant increases include $45,000 in internet costs that need to be captured in the library budget, as well as funding to shift 25% of the salary for one library FTE from library state aid to the general fund. This also includes funding to shift 50% of one of the recreation program coordinators from recreation revolving fund to the general fund, and then some additional program and supplies costs that the recreation department needs to complete their transition to the Raystone Post building.
Sure.
Did you say $45,000 in internet costs?
Yes.
How much is that hardware?
No.
No, that's just use.
Yeah.
Service, yeah.
Yep.
It has, historically been,
Not charged.
not charged by Selco.
Okay, so this is they've always had it.
Correct.
Correct.
So
Yes.
Selco has decided to charge
Yep.
it.
Yep, and
Yes.
some of this we should be able to get reimbursed through the E-rate, not the full 45,000, but there is reimbursable aspects of this.
Okay.
Rajesh had a question.
Yeah, so within the planning and economic development, what's the split between and those two needs, the master plan and then the,
About 250,000
Sustainability.
and then 50,000?
No, 200.
200 and then 50. 200 for the master plan, 50,000 for climate action.
and then the climate action is like also a policy document, or is it a consultant?
It's implementing the policy document. Yeah.
Thank you.
We do know that climate action, as the budget always evolves, will not need the full $50,000, so it'll actually be reduced by the time we get to fiscal projection one. That's one of the first things that has come to light since we've produced it, and we're working through the numbers, but,
Just to loop back in the initial conversation regarding the total amount of commercial lands that Shrewsbury might have, so that this master plan also look into all those aspects and then come up with a detailed information, or?
it definitely does, yeah. I mean, land use and zoning is a critical component of it.
Okay, thank you.
In reference to recreation, does that include all the renovations at the Raystone Post?
No,
Those are funded out, those were funded already through ARPA funds.
So there's no additional money in here right now?
Not in here, but in the capital improvement plan there is.
There is, yeah, on the capital, I saw
Like
that.
200 or something.
250, and that covers all the alternate. So ARPA is fully funding the,
Has that been
Base bid.
already contracted out?
Yep, it's underway.
It should be there before the end of the fiscal year, correct? All right. So the next two slides, we are going to take a look at debt and principal, principal debt and then principal interest, sorry, for the various projects throughout the town. Right now, we're looking at principal, and that's going to be going down 68,637 in FY '26. And just some things to identify, the last two, water capital improvement 2023 and water capital improvement 2024, those are part of the 4-year borrowing that town meeting authorized for the ongoing capital projects for the water utilities. And this allowed us to borrow $12 million for projects and break out the expenditures over the years. And this was one of the ways that we're able to mitigate significant cost increase to the residents by borrowing approximately $4 million a year, and then the debt payments get broken out as such. Those projects include water main replacements, meter replacements, and well maintenance. All right. The next slide will be interest, and then again, this is the corresponding interest to the principal payments, and this is going down about 203,000. All right. I can look at my screen because I have it here too. Going down 203,000 and $89. So a couple other just reference points now that we are wrapping up the general fund portion of this. The average tax bill for FY '26, based off of some of these expenditures that we talked about, if we were to look at our 5-year average real estate and personal property growth, and we were to add that to the current value of 9.2 billion, we would have be just shy of 10 billion for estimated FY '26 value. And with those corresponding numbers, it's looking like the residential tax bill, the average residential tax bill will probably go up about $320 or 3.7% at this point in time. That does not include any of the debt exclusion related to the MFOG project, the town hall and the South Street garage, but based off the expenditures that we've reviewed so far, that's what we are estimating at this point in time. And I think there was one other item I wanted to, sorry, I failed to mention this. Excluded debt from the tax levy is being reduced by $637,075 as this debt is rolling off. That was another point I wanted to make. So that's going to conclude the general fund, and we're going to go through the utilities, and we're almost in the final stretch.
so the town operates 4 utilities: solid waste, water, sewer, and stormwater. These enterprise funds are held separate from the general fund in order to demonstrate the total cost of services that are recovered through user fees and charges. The solid waste enterprise is currently the only enterprise fund subsidized by the tax levy. So in total, the 4 utility funds are budgeted to expend $19,110,388 in FY '26, and this figure represents total estimated revenue less the indirect costs for each enterprise fund, which are captured for each enterprise, which are captured in the general fund. So we'll review those on the next few slides. Starting with solid waste. The solid waste enterprise runs on a pay-as-you-throw model, which was adopted by the town in 2008. And this model partially funds solid waste and recycling collection through a fee residents pay for town-distributed trash bags. The program's fee structure has been designed to cover approximately 50% of the program's expenses, and in FY '26, it's estimated that the tax levy will support 50.42% of the enterprise. Total revenue less grant funds is projected at $1,815,125, and this revenue increase is mostly an adjustment to just account for actual historical revenues collected. Total charges, including indirects, are projected at $3,577,933. This is an increase of $326,647, and this is primarily due to contractual costs with the hauler, increased costs to improve the bag's thickness, and an increased average disposal tonnage. The next utility is stormwater, and the stormwater enterprise was established to meet unfunded mandates from the Federal Environmental Protection Agency. The Stormwater Utility Fund funds the operations to minimize stormwater pollution as outlined in the Stormwater Management Plan. Stormwater revenue is projected at $1,888,934. This is a reduction of just over $2.6 million from FY '25. And revenues will come from stormwater fees only. So as you can see in '25, we did use some retained earnings. There's no planned use of retained earnings in the FY '26 budget at this time. Total direct expenditures are projected at $1,581,541. This is reflective of $1,081,451 in operating expenses, and this covers salaries and wages and the annual catch basin cleaning and maintenance contract. This also includes $500,000 in capital investments for ongoing drainage improvements. And as mentioned before, in FY '25, 2-year contracts were executed for a drainage system mapping project and other stormwater projects that totaled $1.6 million. So those funds were covered in FY '25 and FY '26 and are the primary driver in the reduction of expenditures.
All right. Take a look at water and sewer and water now. So FY '26 fiscal projection 1, total direct charges for the sewer are $10,087,880. This is a fairly consistent sewer budget, though it is a little bit less right now, but we do, as I mentioned earlier, we do not have the sewer article closeouts identified, if there will be any. These operating expenses do not reflect any debt authorization or debt funding for the South Street project at this point in time. That would be updated by fiscal projection 2. The capital investments for sewer in FY '26 are projected at $2,180,000. Then we'll go to water. Water, total direct charges, well, that's not something, but total it should be $6,321,183. Apologize for the direct charges not summing correctly at the bottom. The capital investments here, $97,500. This represents the ongoing vehicle replacement plan for water. We do not show the debt-funded capital here as the operating budget because that's funded through the debt schedule separately that we saw earlier. But we'll be probably borrowing the penultimate $4 million following annual town meeting to do continuous water improvement projects. And that sort of, we're going to land on the expenditure page here next. Just as a final summary of the $186 million projected budget for fiscal year '26 across all of the general fund and utility budgets. Happy to answer any other questions that the committee has at this point in time.
Thank you very much for this great detailed presentation. It's a lot of work went into it, and thank you for taking our questions. I had just one comment that I wanted to raise, and then I'll open it up to everybody else in the committee. As far as the goals and objectives, as far as the strategic plan is concerned, I mean, you had two nice slides as far as what we achieved, what the town achieved, and what the objectives are for 2026. What about the risks and the constraints of things we may be challenged to address in 2026 with respect to this budget? We did talk about the unfunded FTEs, and I agree with many of the committee members that is a significant risk. And what can we do to, as a committee, what can we advise to mitigate that?
We'd be happy to include that on a department by department basis if you'd like, as we go through the budget hearings themselves. I'd be happy to do that. Yeah, I mean, I guess nothing globally jumps into my head right now, but if you give us the time to think about it, we can do that at the budget hearing process, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, that was-
thank you.
Does anybody else have anything they wish to say or add?
I have
Should
a number of questions, but I don't know if this is the right time to do it or not on there. Number one, I'm curious why we're calling a special town meeting this early for the DPU facility
Sure.
in the town hall rather than take it up in May.
Yep.
I think that's in the next item of the agenda. We're gonna cover that
If you-
in 4B.
Yeah, if you'd like me to
We
wait.
can go to
well,
that if there's nothing else on the budget.
Yep.
I just had one comment on the slide, debt interest. Can we add like the number of years left on each of those items? That way we can know.
Yeah, we can get the full debt schedule for you.
And typically, we'll have that printed in fiscal projection, but we'll make sure we get that to the committee that shows total debt obligation for the town. Yep.
Perfect.
Running through, I
And
think
how
right now,
long,
2040 might be as far as.
Yeah,
we're
because each of these have different
Correct, yes.
years remaining, like
Yeah.
aging process.
Absolutely.
Correct, yep,
Yep.
yep. We can definitely provide that.
Perfect, thanks.
I didn't even see it was on there. I
4C,
just had it in my notes.
I think we're done as far as 4A is concerned. We can go to 4B. Thank you.
So that's,
So, yeah.
do you want us to talk about, oh, that's 4C. Go ahead, sorry, Alex. I apologize.
So, similar to what we did last year, we have shared our budget hearing presentation guidance with you all. And hopefully you've had a chance to look at it and think about it. So just to kind of give a high-level overview of what we are planning to present. So we have a slide on preliminary department goals for FY26 and FY25 accomplishments. We will have an overview on the FY26 fiscal projection 1 budget. We will have departmental data such as statistics, permit information, performance measures, things like that. We'll have an overview of grants and other supplemental funds that support those departments. And then we'll have our big picture budget and staffing plan. So this includes 2 prior year actuals, the current fiscal year budget, the department request budget, fiscal projection 1, and then staffing levels for those corresponding fiscal years. And then for departments to have a capital improvement plan, we'll also have a slide on those capital improvement plan requests. So happy to hear feedback about how prior budget hearings have gone, if there's anything you'd like to see differently.
Jean?
Well, I was just gonna first have a follow-up there. When are you gonna present You talking this for public hearings?
This is for the public
On-
hearing, yes.
Well, getting back, I'm just wondering if there's any interest in sharing some of the reviews of the individual departments before then with two people, two committee members at a time, if they have any interest in looking at the DPW, one.
So what the DPW submits for their slides?
Yeah, on there, just to chat in general, and I just throw that out because I'm looking at the departments with the biggest budgets. And maybe there could be some insight that we could pick up that would, I think, accelerate the hearings a little bit. That would be my objective, if we knew in a little more detail and we could share it and pass it on rather than get into the nitty-gritty, but I don't know. Normally, we used to do that. We did that for 10 years. And that started usually in January. We had two-man teams, and they sat with all the individual departments throughout the whole town at that time. Now, it's kind of late now because we're into, March, and it's because it was a long schedule. And, people work, and it was kind of, trying to coordinate everything. But I think that would be a good benefit if we don't do it now, but we do it in the future, and in turn speed up the public hearings a little bit, because I think they get drawn out on there. That's just my opinion on that.
Bill, you had something to say?
And just to add to what Gene said, I think when each of these department heads call out the accomplishments, I think if we can narrate the story related to how it directly or indirectly impacts the town of, residents, like the benefits, that will be great. I think again, to Gene's point, that will also answer some of the questions that come along in, whoever shows up for the public hearings. That's just my suggestion.
I would just add to that, and the concerns as well. That's, I'm not sure how much they would want to share, but, I think would be, and I would just stem back to the, some of those requests. Like,
Yeah,
it's a
sure.
friendly reminder to me, Kevin, when you mentioned the, like, the chief and some of the police needs. I know there's a heavy emphasis on traffic in town, so.
Yeah.
I think those key points for those that listen in can help, not just us, but the audience that listens in. It does seem to be important reminders, and for us, and for myself as well, so. The
Absolutely.
pros and the cons.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd like to see if they could, for the requests they didn't get, I'd like to see them explain the importance of it and what we lose by not presenting that request.
Sure.
Go a little more in depth of what, we could say we need another police officer because the average number of incidents by here puts us below the FBI statistics, which is important, but what does it really mean? Do we have officers that are now working 50, 60, 70 hours a week? Which, 70 hours a week is probably not going to be the most effective person out there.
Sure.
So. And also, what are we costing overtime by not hiring even part-time officers or part-time, firefighters? What are we paying in overtime?
If I can just add a comment, I appreciate the thought of allowing some committee members to go into deeper dives. I understand the rationale behind that to speed up the public hearing, but even with the length of the public hearing, I think it's important for these conversations to be in public and transparent and available to those who want to hear them. So maybe just another recommendation or something, Mr. Chair, if there's a way to allow the discussion, but try to keep us on time a little bit better than we have in past years. I know it's a very delicate balancing act of allowing questions and discussion, but keeping on time. So I don't know the best way to do that, but that would maybe be my recommendation since we haven't done the deep dives as committee members. So.
Adding that, I'd almost say we could I'd be willing to add another night. And bring fewer people in each night, but be able to have the in-depth discussion. Because the one thing I do hear from the town is we don't allow enough discussion, there isn't enough information there, I think we should, you know, it may be, you know, we're not the same size town we were 10 years ago either when we're doing this 2 days. Maybe it is time to bring in a little bit bigger and we can get it more in depth for the public as well.
So could we, like, I think one of the problems we face is that as a committee, we have a lot of questions and what may be seen as interrupting a presentation, maybe if the presentations could be broken up into sections with Q&A, breaks in between, that would improve the flow. Because last year, the school committee time, I think we went off into a lot of very important discussions, but I think it could have been managed better in terms of the flow. So that's one suggestion I had. Rajesh, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I think after every couple slides, maybe a break and then
Break.
see whether there is
Q&A.
Q&A opportunity for Q&A. And also, would like to see the risks, as the chair also mentioned early on. So what risks were faced the previous year and how they were so one thing is mitigation, how they mitigated that risk so that the others can learn, and what they anticipate the risks for the next year, either with the budget, the things that are not approved, or even if they got the full budget, what are the risks that they're enforcing, especially when it comes to the grants and all those things, right? And then the last thing is, can we prioritize the order of sequence order by percentage increase, year over year percentage increase in budget, so that we go in the highest increase department and then go in that order. That way, maybe the ones which has no increase this year might not need that much back and forth conversation. I think you have a slide. So we have a slide at the very beginning of this presentation where there is a percentage year over increases. Maybe we can follow the same slide, and then that way it's much more.
If that's the order that you want to go in, you have to, I mean, we can do that, but you have to let us know. We've been presenting the budget in functional areas to you and rotating the groups through between Thursday night and Saturday. If you want us to do something different, additional time, you just, now's the time to let us know so we can finalize that.
And one other thing, I also would suggest that we get as many questions up front that we want to ask, and we can send them to the chair, and we can review the question, and he can send them out to the team, and we can review it and decide, maybe we all have the same question, okay? We don't all need to ask the same question.
As sort of a functional thing. So we have the hearing on Thursday, the public input, and then Saturday we hear all the departments. What is the public's expectation of this committee, that we vote to approve or disapprove budgets? Are we just recommending? So when they come in and they talk, what is our mission, what's our power, what's our goal to hear all this at the end? That make sense?
We recommend, we don't approve or disapprove.
So no matter what people say to us, when people come in and present, we just recommend in whole their budget.
Individually.
No, I'm sorry, so each department's budget,
We,
right?
Not
Yeah,
during
no,
those public
no,
hearings,
no.
that's later.
Yeah.
On the Saturday.
No,
No.
later, when the warrants.
Okay, so I'm just trying to walk it through, so people watching, people coming in, they talk to us, then we hear everyone on Saturday, then the warrants come out, and then that's when we recommend,
yes.
right? So we have, just so people know, when they come here, they talk to us, unlike the select board, the manager who make the budget, we don't have any power to change anything, we can just recommend at the end.
Right.
Individually. I mean, we can have split decisions.
And it's confusing because our bylaws are a little bit different. It says we can disapprove in part and in whole,
Yep.
which is what our bylaw says, and that's not what we're doing. So I think it's confusing to people, and I want to just clarify what we're doing. It's,
Disapproving in part and whole in your recommendations is town meeting.
Yeah.
but I'm just saying that's not how it's written. I just want to make sure it's clear, because, you and I had talked about that. It wasn't clear to me when I read it. So when people come and talk to us, there's very little direct effect we have upon anything. in that way. We just recommend and not recommend.
We're recommending to the town meeting members our view on the budget.
Yes, and several town meeting members do go by our recommendation.
And then the other thing we do is we will talk to the towns about individual pieces of the budget. So if I don't like that, the school department's gonna spend, $5 million on iPads, I'll bring that up, and that might be a reason why I might say I don't approve of the school budget. And we have the ability and right to disapprove as an individual for any reason in there. We should be able to recommend why. But yeah, we don't have control of, we can't just say, nope, you can't spend that money, and we say no, and that's that.
And I'm just making that clear, because I think when you hear finance committee, they think maybe they think we have more control over than we do.
Yeah, I think we bring that up almost every year, that we don't have control.
I'm just trying to bring it up.
No, that's fine, that's fine. Yeah.
So, Mr. Chair, if I might recommend, just based on all of our feedback, if there is any changes that, in the schedule or something like that, maybe if you can make a decision kind of based on the feedback you've heard and work with the town manager's office if you do want to make any changes, or just leave it as we've historically done, if that sounds reasonable to everybody.
Yeah, I would just ask, would anyone be up for trying to get an extra day and then pare it down per day and have a little bit less each time?
Comments on that? Our Thursday meeting does go pretty long.
Yeah.
I was just gonna counter that with, Alex, I was just reflecting back on your comment to us about, is it absolutely necessary to meet with every department?
I think so.
Yeah?
I think it's, if we're gonna make a recommendation on it, we should at least hear from the department. And it also gives them the ability, remember, we're talking, but hopefully people are watching this and they can
Exactly.
actually learn something from it.
And then we
So-
have new members always coming in. who
Can
are
I,
educated.
I'm sorry.
Please.
Please go ahead, Kip.
So, I understand what your response is, Dennis. The seeming contradiction to this, and maybe I'm sticking my foot in my mouth, but I'm gonna do it anyhow. You look at the school budget on a bottom line basis at $90 million, and that's what town meeting approves. And you look at individual town departments that may be $200,000, and every department head comes in and makes a presentation to you. Everyone enjoys doing it, don't get me wrong, but, to Mr. Flynn's point, the level of scrutiny, not only by town meeting, but of this body into, if you're looking at time, that we do have some very small budgets that, have one FTE and, there may be something to consider there if the committee's looking for time. So I would just offer that, if you're gonna, town meeting looks at, in accordance with the general laws, right? It's none of our doing. It's just a seeming contradiction in the process that we use in setting the budget.
So I think to that point, maybe there is some right sizing of the time and the presentation by the department budget size, that maybe that's some different guidance that you could give, especially to maybe the smaller departments.
Right.
Yeah.
Just one quick comment as far as giving questions to the chair. We tried that in previous years, and it's a very difficult thing because you don't know really what they're gonna present. We would have to have every presentation that each department is gonna make well in advance to really structure a question and answer. That's my opinion on there, so.
Yeah, I'm gonna add to that. I think a lot's gonna fall in our chair this year to really keep it in line. There's a lot of repetitive questions, not only from us sometimes, and we kind of go, into different lanes, and from the public. So if they've made a comment, we want to give everyone an opportunity to speak, of course, but at the same time, we have a job here to do as well, and then let everyone speak and make sure that we're covering all the topics and drilling down where necessary.
Absolutely. That's why I was saying, if there's some general questions you have up front that you'd want to have answered, it'd be good to, get those up front.
So, to the point I gave, maybe adding one more session, I'm up for it. If Monday night or some other day night, I'm good with that, because I'd rather have it thoroughly discussed than speed it up and give feed to the conspiracies.
Historically, how long has it been, public debate?
Long.
Very long, yeah. The Thursday one goes up till past 10:30,
Past 10, 10:30, sometimes 11.
even touch 11 o'clock, yeah.
And we start at 6 typically.
So
then
12
For
hours
5 hours?
between the,
Yeah.
12 hours between the 2 days.
Okay.
And the Saturday one, we finished around 3:30, we're done,
Sometimes later.
yeah.
Yeah, we can have a Monday optional, maybe a Monday optional. So if it really drags on, maybe if we prioritize the ones based on the budget or based on the percent increase, then the last ones might be more faster.
I don't know, I think if you're gonna ask people to be here to present, and then we shut them off and say, now we're gonna see you Monday.
Yeah, that,
I think if we're gonna schedule, we're gonna schedule. I see the benefit of not having an 8-10 hour session, but you guys have done it longer than I have. I'm in for it to midnight, let's do it.
I'm gonna repeat what I said earlier. I think it's incumbent upon us as a board to stick to the timeframes we've established. It's already March. It's March 1st,
Right.
Saturday. It's a little late, in my opinion. And as far as the hierarchy on percentage increase, I'm not sure that might be, it's a good idea. It might be a little bit late. My knee jerk is that would probably put the school committee on, if we did it higher on Thursday instead of a Saturday, without looking at the numbers, right?
Yep.
So I think that's some pretty significant changes.
And percentage is tough, because if we just went by percentage, then it would be community development, which
Exactly.
is 77%, but it's on $200,000. So like, we have to, it doesn't, again, to Kevin's point, we're looking at the school budget at a $90 million line item, and we're not looking at the 1, 2, 3 of a single department, which could be $1,000.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, perhaps we stick with what we have. I think at this point it's a little bit late to change, but perhaps we can have some sort of subcommittee or something to look and maybe re-optimize ahead of next year's, if that would be amenable.
Just to add one comment, if you're talking about extra time, I would think you'd put it on the tail end when we had more chance to talk about it ourselves at a regular committee meeting, rather than presentations. It would give us more in-depth time to get into the nitty-gritty if there were some questions. That would be my opinion on it.
That's a good thought. My thought was, we have been getting more people in these meetings, showing up for these when there's, a lot to discuss. So I want to make sure everyone has their chance
Yeah.
to speak without us having to stay till, 11:30 or 12. And granted, by that point, everyone's getting a little bit on edge.
Yeah.
So keeping a few of them shorter, might, help on that.
Have we ever had any of these committee meetings or any other committees and I've been to hearings and where you have X amount of minutes to speak, X amount, this is your time to speak, that's it. This is your time to speak, that's it. Have we ever done anything like that in this town?
We have tried, but it's never worked, so,
Let's add a timer.
yeah, maybe have a
Yeah,
timer.
we've often, even recently, we've actually tried to get people to keep to a minute or 2 minutes. And that's proven to not be very doable.
So I guess maybe we'll keep the format as it is for
Yeah, no,
now.
that makes sense. I
Yeah,
just brought
yeah.
it up, but
Yeah,
it's late in the game.
yeah, but we have great suggestions for next year. And if you could just like organize it in the way if we could try to streamline the presentations in such a way that the flow keeps moving without us having to diverge into wrong areas, not wrong areas, but go off on tangents that we shouldn't be going into,
Like
so
we
that
just
just goes straight and everything progresses. We get a chance to discuss everything that's important, but we do it in a flow, in a proper flow. So, as chair, I'll try to basically maintain that as well. I hope.
I'll just add to, and Kevin, I'll lean on you, like if you could maybe pull some of to my comment earlier about maybe some of the smaller departments.
We can look at
I think you do it already, but,
Yep.
cemetery comes to mind.
Yeah,
for example.
yeah,
Yeah.
Like,
weights
bang,
and
you know,
measures.
bang, even if you brought them up
Yeah,
all at once and let them go.
yep,
Just little things. I mean, we're not gonna do a 180 tonight, but I think
Yeah.
this feedback helps you. I think
no, it
I'd be
does.
open to it anyways.
Yeah. No, we can definitely think about that as we schedule it and
Okay.
what we allocate.
And we have shifted the schedule a little bit from how it's normally
Great.
been. So, I mean, proposed right now, we have community development and DPW on Thursday,
Perfect.
and then school and public safety Saturday morning, and then kind of filling the afternoon with more of the admin and finance
Yeah.
departments that
Great.
we handle, so.
Thank you.
Okay.
You got C?
Yes, 4C.
Okay,
Action dates.
yeah, so if you don't, I can address Jean's question of why are we having a special town meeting and not waiting till the annual? I believe that was your question, right, Jean? So, the thought behind this is, we intend to ask for a debt exclusion, for a portion of it, roughly half of the total cost of the project, which would be, what is funded, outside of the utilities. And if we waited till the annual town meeting, the ballot question would precede the debate of town meeting and the borrowing authorization determination that town meeting does. So it's, we think, mutually beneficial for us to fully present the project in its detail at town meeting and give town meeting the opportunity to debate it versus going to the ballot, which is a solitary decision that individuals are making. So this is the opportunity to present the project and receive questions and answer questions. So again, if we waited to do it at the annual town meeting, since we want to have the debt exclusion question on the May election, it would precede that debate by town meeting.
Would you say half? You're only going for
That's correct.
32
So,
million 5, so you're 17 million?
well, 15 million.
Yeah, 'cause-
So, because 2 million of that was borrowed, or
Already.
2 million of that was the design, which has already been funded. So right now, we anticipate it's, the debt exclusion will be about $44 on the average single tax bill. So it's a smaller project.
Can I do one additional follow-up? Now, the school has received approval on the school addition.
Yep.
Could you share with us an approximate cost we're talking about?
So I can share with you a timeline and what I know about a cost. So they were accepted into the MSBA feasibility process, and that means that they are just at the outset and need to do all the due diligence it would be to even get to a full, to start of design. So there's 270-day period that starts on March 3rd, and there are several obligations during that time frame, including the establishment of a building committee and the affirmation of our maintenance policies and an analysis of student enrollment and all those things. So that would conclude with likely at the fall town meeting, the first significant amount of funds being authorized for the initial design work for that project. That project, the best cost estimate that we have for it was done during the K-12 study feasibility after Beal was built. It's about a $150 million project. That includes an 80,000 square foot addition, and the full larger scale maintenance capital investment that you would put into a 25-year-old building. So HVAC system replacement, roof replacement, window replacement. So that's the parameters of the costs that I'm aware of and the scope of work. And this is kind of, we're in year one of, if it's normally a 6-year project, we would be starting year one here in March and looking to take occupancy if everything kept going in about 5 to 6 years from now.
The only reason I really bring it up is, I don't know if you've seen, I've been following the schools in Worcester
Yep.
with the renovations and the opening of Doherty on there, in the millions on the overrides, and really didn't accomplish everything they wanted to do in the beginning. One big thing being the solar aspect of it. They got the framework, but no solar on there, you know, and some of the items have been, 5 million, 6 million, and they're still not done. They're working on the parking lots and the athletic fields right now, so it's mind-boggling to me that I think the initial cost was only like 150 million, and I don't know where they are right now at the present time, and they've got 2 or 3 other schools lined up
Yep.
in the pipeline to do, so it's gonna be a big project. Big project.
Okay, just coming back to the special town
Yeah.
meeting, what will happen if we don't get a quorum on April 14th? For town meeting and we can't vote on it, then,
Well, yeah, you can't take any action, so, there's no requirement to have the, borrowing authorization done in advance of the ballot question. Either one can go first. It's just, again, there's no presentation of a project if it goes to the ballot first. So we want to be able to explain the project, share the design, answer questions that folks may have. Our biggest audience for that and has a critical role in it is town meeting, and that's why we want to go to town meeting. If we wouldn't have it, or if the vote wouldn't pass that evening, that would be a decision of what we did with the, ballot question. That'd be a select board determination.
and if, everything goes like, if it does pass on April 14th, but the ballot fails, then what happens?
Could ask the ballot again, but you don't, we don't, we'd have to do the investigation, but I can say, like, I don't think we have the funding to fund the debt service through the general, tax levy.
So when we discussed that during the public hearing on the 27th, could you please include, right now we're doing half utilities and half
Yep.
debt exclusion. I had sent some questions to you. My concern about doing the utilities is once the debt's paid off, the utilities still stay up high because you're increasing utility every year 5%. So what that would look like by just taking out debt exclusion, which when the debt's done, it's done, compared to raising utility rates and having them be there forever, if that makes sense. So if you kind of talk about why
sure.
it's done halfway,
Yep.
what the concerns are on leaving those utility rates high, would they come down, would they use it, if that sort of field.
Yep.
Thank you.
Can address that.
Any other questions or comments on 4C? Gene?
I just have one other comment. Is there anything maybe my eyes are going bad, but it's tough reading some of these numbers off these screens
Okay,
on there. I don't know if they can be increased in size.
sure.
I mean, I'm having trouble looking directly at them, but if we have public hearing and we've got stuff up on the
Yeah.
screens,
Mhm.
I don't know how other members feel, but
Right.
some of those numbers I couldn't read.
We can put
Out of there.
materials out as well if you'd like. Just let us know. Happy to do that. Yep.
Because we don't have laptops.
Marianne's right there, but
Would there be printouts of the presentation material for the public?
If you'd like us to, we'd be happy to, yeah.
I think for the public, it might make sense, yeah. Just a few nominal copies.
I'll just say too, since we do it on a department level, it is less numbers
Yeah.
that are on the screen. We're doing functional areas, so we have
Oh, I see, yeah.
6 to 8 departments on one slide, but it'll just be,
So you can zoom it bigger?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, maybe that's a better way to go. Okay. Anything else on 4C? That concludes the town manager's report. Thank you, Kevin and team. We'll go to item number 5, which is the meeting schedule. So Thursday, March 20th at 6 p.m., we'll have the first budget hearing. And then the continued budget hearing on Saturday, March 22nd, starting at 8:30 a.m. in this very room. That very week, then, on Thursday, March 27th, will be the public hearing on the special town meeting warrant. We will be getting the warrant prior to, a copy of the warrant prior to, for review prior to that meeting.
Yep, ideally a week beforehand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and there is just the one article, and it's
Yep.
the very simple article with the $30 million in it, but, yep, we will get it to you.
Then April 10th will be the public hearing for the annual town meeting warrant. April 14th will be the special town meeting. April 17th will be the public hearing on the annual town meeting warrant. Once again, we'll get the warrant well in advance. And then finally, on May 19th is the annual town meeting. Any questions or comments on the meeting schedule that we have in front of us? It's an intense schedule, so I just hope everybody's clear on it. Okay, and committed. Thank you. Okay, we'll move to correspondence. Item number 6. We got a letter to the Finance Committee from the Central Massachusetts Mosquito Control Project regarding the FY26 total assessment estimate. I think that was misdirected to us, correct, Alex? That email?
The,
It was misdirected to us
the,
regarding the mosquito control project.
no, so that's actually, that was a letter that the finance committee is CC'd on that.
I see. Okay.
Part of offsets and charges in the bottom of the master balance sheet.
Okay. Okay, then we received an email from Dr. Joe Sawyer, Superintendent of Schools. This was regarding the school department budget, FY26. And it had the superintendent's recommendations dated February 12th, 2025. That reminds me, at the last meeting, we had asked for a set of resources we could review prior to the budget hearings. So I think this particular meeting is extremely important for the committee to look at prior to that. And any other meetings, a list of meetings that we can review prior to our public hearings. If you could provide us with that,
Sure.
that'd be great. Any questions or comments on the correspondence that we received? If not, we'll go to item number 7, which is an adjournment. May I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All against, please say nay. The motion passes. Thank you all.